I am opening the 112th session of the trial. The Attorney General will continue with his summing up.
By provision of court, I shall now come to list the proofs against Adolf Eichmann that he had connection and had direct or indirect control of the concentration and death camps. The known ghetto Terezin served as a propaganda camp, and this is in the documents. Propaganda lager, they call it. Within the Reich itself, the Nazis did not cram Jews into the ghettos the way it was done in Eastern Europe, but they were removed from their homes and sent to Terezin, to Lodz, and to death camps in Neve and Rush. This is the place to stress that Terezin never obeyed orders or took instructions from the Office for Economy and Administration. Formerly, the camp was at the command of the police in Prague, the security police, and the camp was financed by the emigration fund from monies collected from the Jews themselves. The actual command of Terezin was in the hands of the Central Office for Jewish Affairs in Bohemia and Moravia, that is, directly under the command of Ginter, that is, subordinate to Eichmann's orders. His full and complete rule of Eichmann in the organizing of this ghetto found expression in his very own words when questioned by the police. T37, page 2029. And I quote, "Then things took a turn that I have ordered the setting up of a Jewish police down there to consist of 150 men, as I believe, I cannot remember, or maybe 200 men strong, so that they are able to conduct their own affairs." And then the thing happened. How, I do not remember. There was an order by Himmler that he wishes to transform the Theresienstadt to an old men's ghetto. That is an aim no one thought of before. It did not occur to anyone. These are Eichmann's words. As far as his complete rule and directives to the inmates of the ghetto, and when one disobeys a rule, he is likely to be killed, and this punishment was meted out often. This was testified by Seidel and Ram. Seidel was a man of his own unit. Ram was Hans Ginter's assistant. Himmler wished to continue and run this ghetto for the great work of camouflage, but Eichmann treated this ghetto the way he treated all other ghettos and strived to exterminate its inmates. About this friction and contradiction of opinions, this is mentioned in the report by the representative of the International Red Cross at the end of the war in Geneva in June 1946. He reports there that whilst Himmler was considering in April 45 on the threshold of the defeat. More human methods of dealing with the Jews. Eichmann does not identify himself with his opinion personally, but as a good soldier, he will obey the orders of the Reichsführer. Even at the last meeting of the accused with Himmler, about which we learned from his own mouth, matters of Theresian were discussed. T37, page 309, when Himmler informs him that, with the intention in mind of conducting negotiations with Eisenhower, Himmler wishes to transfer immediately 100 or 200 Jews from that camp to the Tyrol to guarantee and ensure their lives, and that Himmler appears to be more human and more respectable in the eyes of the American commander. At that very time, Wolf, Himmler's chief deputy, conducted negotiations with the Allied armies with the intention to arrange the surrender of Germany in the Western Front. Eichmann dealt with the deportation of Jews from Terezin to Auschwitz. The last selections were carried out there in the fall, and this we know from Oppenheimer, in the months of the fall of 1944. He was known to all the inmates of that camp, and the witness Diamant told the court about a certain selection with Eichmann's personal participation. In the session 145, page 16, the counsel for the defense questioned this witness with the intention to prove that Eichmann at the time was in Hungary, and that he could not have been at Terezin at the very same time. But the accused himself said, and we learn from him, that also during the Hungarian period of his activity, he would make trips to Berlin from time to time. So there is no contradiction between the two, and the court is requested to state the fact that Diamant, the witness, spoke the truth. Terezin must have been the place marked by Eichmann for the final liquidation of the survivors, and this after the big death factory of Auschwitz was taken by the Russian army. Therefore, in the months of January, February 45, the remaining Jews of the Reich, those who lived in mixed marriages, were brought to Terezin. And therefore it seems Mrs. Salzberger was sent to Terezin after being questioned by Eichmann. And direct evidence on this subject we heard from Adolf Engelstein. This is session 45, page 33 and onwards. Vyslitseny himself testifies to this effect. As far as the Bergen-Belsen camp is concerned, we know that Eichmann gave instructions to transfer Argentine Jews to that camp, and this was a collective order of arrest to all police posts, T500. Complaints about conditions of life in this Bergen-Belsen camp were addressed to him. But he visited other camps as well. When interrogated by the police, he related many times, and the court will find this in the written summing up which we shall submit about a visit to Treblinka, about the fictitious railway station he saw there, signs and arrows to deceive and mislead the victims until the very last moment of their lives. When he spoke to Zassen, he told him details about the visit to this camp. I questioned him, session 102, page 21. He confirmed the essence of these words. He does remember that the commander of this camp had a small armored car, a kind of semi-trailer, and Eichmann drove this vehicle a long time around the camp until he learned how to drive this vehicle, and later, he says, he went back to Lublin. We can only imagine how many hundreds or thousands of Jews were choking in the gas chambers while Mr. Eichmann was taking this round around the camp, the death camp. He cannot remember for certain. This is what he said in court, whether this was Treblinka camp or Majdanek. But he does remember well the visit to Chelmno camp. The camp which was started in December 41, this is T1297, ceased to operate in the year 1943, and this transpires from the same Polish official report. And on that same occasion, when this camp ceased to operate, Kaltenbrunner was requested to instruct the staff officers in the camp transferred to army service in Yugoslavia to keep their mouths shut in regard to what they saw and what they heard in the Chelmno camp. There is one only conclusion, that the staff in the camp was at the command of Kaltenbrunner. He was the man to give him this instruction of keeping their mouths shut. He, and not the head of the Office of Administration and Economy. And that this was so, and that the staff of that camp was taking orders from the RSHA, we know also from Ollendorf's affidavit, and from the affidavit by Globel. In the hands of the RSHA were also the maintenance and the operation of those sealed trucks into which Jews were pushed and killed by choking by exhaust gas. I have already mentioned that Rudolf Hess testified in order to visit Chelmno, he needed the permission of Adolf Eichmann. Now to the death camps in the Lublin area. The accused admits that he sent the Jews from the west to these areas. Had he admitted only that much, then he is admitting active cooperation between himself and Globotnik. The transports of Jews to these camps in the direction of Cholm, on which there was no duty at all to report to the Office of Economy and Administration, and this not as was the order to report about transports and deportations to Auschwitz. I insist that the court recall Eichmann obstinately maintained that camps were not under the command of Office Number 4, and not to the head security office of the Reich, only to the head office of administration and economy. There was this a further attempt to alienate himself from the chapter in the camps themselves. And Globocnik was ordered T737, T1399 to report to Office 4B4 about deportations arriving, and not to the head office for economy and administration. In Eichmann's directives, a general and mass deportation is discussed, including children and old people. It says distinctly that the commander of the security police in Krakow, Scheengart, the one who took part at the Wannsee conference, will be responsible to receive them, and that his units, the units of Globocnik, will assist him. And when this action is over, this is to be reported to Office 4B4. These are Adolf Eichmann's instructions. We shall add the testimony by Rudolf Hess before the International Military Court that the camps at Belzec, Treblinka, and a third camp, Wolczek, which we do not know much about, were all operated by a special operation group of the SIPO. And we shall add the fact that Wirth, the commander of the Belzec camp, was a SIPO man, T1295. We add to this Wislicenis testimony, T58. We shall remember that Gerstein supplied the poison gas in the year 1942 after examining extermination operations in the Lublin area, and this in accordance with Ginter's orders. Let us also bear in mind the report about the final liquidation of the camps presented by Globocnik, in which it says, Aussiedlung ist erledigt und abgeschlossen. That is, the killing of the Jews was completed, and the robbing of their property was achieved. And the final conclusion is that the office, the head office for economy and administration, did not operate the death camps, did not send people to those camps, and reports were not sent to this office, except in regard to Auschwitz. And to this I will come later. And Eichmann's argument and contention in this matter is completely without any foundation. There is a whole list of connections and contacts made by Globocnik, and this will be included in our written summing up. In order not to tire the court, I shall not go into detail, but he did admit a list of contacts over a long period. This he admitted. And now to Auschwitz. Rudolf Hess testified at the International Military Court in Nuremberg, as well as in his own case. Adolf Eichmann had complete rule of the lot and fate of Jews sent by him, those who were known as transport Jews, Transportjuden. correct. Auschwitz was at the time included camps conducted by the Office for Economy and Administration. And the commanders of those camps, when, if we may call this acting and fulfilling a task, did obey orders given by Paul. But orders as far as the fate and lot of those deported to the camps, their reception, their release, to keep them on and on or to send them on immediately, all this was in the hands of the deporting office, and this is the order which was kept until the very end. This we know from Hess, and this we know from the official directives of the head office for economy and administration reporting the transports. Eichmann instructed, according to Hess, to keep the Terezin deportees in the family camp at Auschwitz for a number of months. We were told here by Yehuda Bakon what this family camp meant. This camouflage worked again. The aim was that they write letters and calm and soothe their families back home. The letters were dictated by Gestapo men. Full corroboration is found in Hess' testimony, T1356. Page 19. Eichmann supervised personally the deportations, and he laid down the date for their killing in gas chambers. I do not say that he was the man to decide and fix a date for each individual person when he would be sent to the gas chamber. This was too much. But which deportation, which transport will be taken directly to the gas chambers, and which transport or deportation will be held for a time in a family camp? This was entirely in his hands, except for very special cases. When Gizzi Fleischmann was sent to Auschwitz, she came with the special order: return undesirable. R.U. Rückwärts unergänzlich. Conrad Morgan, the examining judge of the SS, after visiting Auschwitz and other extermination camps, he gave the order to arrest Eichmann. And the witness Rajewski, a Polish prisoner who was kept busy in the political department, that is, the department registering the inmates of Auschwitz, testified that remember the Walze postcards. When deportees were ordered to send them to their relatives as though they were in peace. We remember the articles published, written by Fritz Fiala, the Slovakian, which Wisliceni requested Fiala at the order of Eichmann to calm the Slovakian population, the Jews and the government as well. And Fiala, after a visit to Auschwitz, wrote and said it was a convenient place, people were happy in their work, and their life is convenient and pleasant. And when the Institute for the Research of Ancestry needed skeletons for the collection at Strasbourg, Eichmann is the man to be approached. And when Sievers was questioned, the case against Sievers, why did he apply to Eichmann in this matter? He answered that the chief superintendent of concentration camps, Glix, was the man to refer him to Eichmann. Once again the question, why did Sievers order Eichmann to supply the skeletons? And if the version put forward by the... What reason had Sievers to say that he was referred to Eichmann or to shift the blame onto Eichmann? And if Eichmann's version is correct, that all this was not within his competence or jurisdiction, and if his answer was, I do not deal in skeletons nor in skulls, why did Sievers follow his application once again in writing after a couple of months? Repeating the same request, Sievers requested skulls and skeleton for the anatomical collection. Sievers discussed the matter with Ginter. There was a kind of break in the whole negotiations, but from T1363 we understand that Dr. Weger, who dealt with the same matter at Auschwitz, there was a kind of epidemic at Auschwitz and this could not be carried on. And after a number of months, the application is renewed once again in writing and again to Eichmann. The accused tries to find shelter, and this against so much evidence and proofs against him. He says a secret mission assigned to Ginter by Miller. And if Office 4 had no connection with Auschwitz, why should Miller assign the supply of gas or the supply of skulls and skeletons on anyone, let it be Ginter or anyone else? Besides this general question, then the version does not stand proof in the face of two facts. When Sievers approached Dr. Brandt in this matter, one of the head medicos of the SS, he attached a draft of an application to Eichmann in the same matter. And Brandt did refer to Eichmann. According to the draft put before him, can we really think that the peak and summit of the commanders of the SS did not know who was competent and who was in authority? Refers to a man who has no connection with such matters, and the draft itself is being prepared. The draft and the letter which has to be addressed to His Highness Adolf Eichmann. This is the way to write to His Eminence, and he will supply the skeletons. And these are the heads of the command, the man at the top. Therefore, his version here is not acceptable, and the fact that Sievers applied to him once again in writing proves that he could not say to Sievers, I am not competent, because had he said so in the first instance, Sievers would not have applied to him once again. And finally, as transpires from the directives by the Head Office for Administration and Economy, the fact that the political department from the RSHA was transferred to the Department of Concentration Camps did not detract from the full authorities of the RSHA to continue and rule and decide in all matters of deportation of prisoners to concentration camps and their release from those camps. This is in T1278. And the standing orders, this in T1280, for the conducting and ruling of those camps, which came from the Head Office for Administration and Economy, they contain a very plain and clear order regarding the Jews. From those directions it transpires that there were two kinds of Jews. Transport Juden, Jews in transport, and these are clearly sent by 4B4 small a, that is Eichmann's unit, and Jews coming from protective custody, Schutzhaftbefehl-Juden. Their marking was 4B2. These were the Jews, as we know from the testimony by Raya Kagan, session 70, page 12, also an inmate of Auschwitz. And in this cursed section, those who were arrested for a telephone call during the hours of curfew or any other offense, the punishment was deportation to a concentration camp. And the Office for Economy and Administration requested that these cases be marked in red ink in an outstanding manner. They were political, they were criminal prisoners. And as Raya Kagan told the court, the distorted concept of the Nazis, they were meted out better treatment than the Transport Juden. And usually and in general, those who came as criminal prisoners were not subjected to selections. The gas chambers were intended for Transport Juden first and foremost. And Rudolf Hess, what does he say? T90, page 12, the printed copy. Transport Juden, this was the marking for all Jews sent to Auschwitz camp by Eichmann's office, 4B4 RSHA. The delivery notes always and invariably bore the remark that transport is suitable for standing orders and must be given special treatment. This is what Rudolf Hess says. Special treatment means death. Eichmann himself made a slip of the tongue once.
President of Court, excuse me, sir, but do we have a document which includes that formulation by Hess? Mr. Hausner, yes, T90, page 12. President of Court, no. I mean, Hess gives an exact formulation here about a transport designated for death. We have letters from France, for instance.
Your Honor, you mean the forms? No, Your Honor. These are personal forms, Your Honor, of a certain Jew, filled out as Raya Kagan related to the court in Auschwitz. A part of those forms were filled in by the inmates themselves, personal details, and the lower part of the same form, including the deporting unit, would be filled out by the SS men. Hess speaks of the order which would accompany the whole transport.
President of
Your
Court,
Honor.
I understand, but we have letters, for instance, those signed by Röttke from France, or the Düsseldorf documents, and my question was, which of these documents contain that formulation which Hess gives? It says, for instance, this transport left such and such a railroad station at such and such a time.
Your Honor, I cannot remember, but I will examine the matter. My colleagues also maintain they do not remember, but we shall try to look it up, Your Honor. In any case, Your Honor, I do not believe that on this point there is room to disbelieve Hess. I understand the court there is no corroboration
President of
to
Court,
his words,
yes.
but when it comes to weighing the probative value of the evidence on these points where a war criminal tries to shift the blame, it is desirable to find corroboration, especially if he wishes to shift a matter which is connected with him onto another criminal, then we should look carefully in the evidence before the court. But here it is really of no difference had Hess said that the order came from the Office for Economy and Administration, or Miller, or Kaltenbrunner, or anyone else. Why Eichmann? This is the question. There is also a negative fact. There is not one proof to the contrary. There is not one testimony except the accused himself, saying, and he stands alone without any corroboration by any other witness. I do not know the probative value this court will attach to the fact that the International Military Court at Nuremberg decided to acquit Paul from direct responsibility for killing. We cannot use this conclusion and decision because this was a different court and the proof was brought to court in a different way. We know what the prosecution proved at the time, but this is a fact, Your Honors. Paul was sentenced to death for commanding the concentration camps. He was executed. But from the accusation of ordering directly the killings, from this he was acquitted. Eichmann himself made a slip of the tongue once and told the court that when he intended to do a good turn to an acquaintance of his, a Jew by the name of Storper, he went to Auschwitz, especially, this T37, page 224, and when he saw Storper and his suffering, he made a note in the Auschwitz books which guaranteed Storper to be kept busy cleaning the gravel paths in the camp. Court will remember that I have questioned Eichmann in this matter, and this session 99, pages 9 to 7. And when he realized the danger from the conclusion that it was in his power to order things within Auschwitz, he said that he received permission from Miller to intervene on Storper's behalf. And when questioned, where did Miller get this authority to intervene? Because according to his own version, the RSHA had no competence and no authority at all within the concentration camps. He added that Miller probably obtained Glick's permission, the head inspector of concentration camps. That is, Eichmann wants us to believe that he goes to Auschwitz on a special mission to intervene on behalf of a Jew, and he bothers about this matter the head of the Gestapo, and the head of the Gestapo approaches the man in command of all concentration camps so that Störper is given easier work and will be kept busy cleaning those gravel paths. These things are reduced ad absurdum when he wants, by lies, to answer and to get away from accusations which he cannot do. His authority was clear to instruct about the fate and the employment of Jews in camps, and the man who had this authority to make the lot of an inmate lighter had the competence and the authority over all the camp. Otherwise, what right has Eichmann to make notes and remarks in the personal files of inmates of camps? And if we believe his version, then Hess had to receive the directive from Glick's that Eichmann would be coming to the camp. Eichmann would make a note in the personal file, and this is how Hess will have to conduct himself in the future in regard to Störper. I believe there were hundreds of thousands of men in those camps. It was an immense factory. There were 39 camps at Auschwitz. The absorbing capacity was 100,000 people or over. He wants us to believe that in the matter of one single Jew, this was the procedure. What happened to Störper? We hear from Eichmann himself. He says that Ginter brought about his execution in Auschwitz, together with Epstein and Edelstein. Once again, the question arises, if Ginter, the deputy for the head of this office, who certainly has not more authority than his superiors, if he is authorized and competent to order the executions, then Eichmann of course had this authority. And when I asked him, he said, yes, correct. It seems that he had a confirmation from Miller. Where did Miller get his authority and competence? To this there was no reply. Kastner, in his report, writes the report on page 47. He says, Eichmann told me, if Brandt does not return within 3 days, I shall operate once again the mill at Auschwitz. And Hansi Brandt said here at session 58, page 52, Eichmann told me,